What is actually going on with the Diomande to Real Madrid transfer? Meanwhile, it's Vini Jr. or bust for Arsenal. Mudryk is suddenly cleared to play for Chelsea again, and this 18-year-old Socceroos prodigy is heading to the Premier League for a record-breaking fee. This is DMAC Daily. This time last week, Yan Diomande's move from RB Leipzig to Real Madrid was more or less a done deal. Out of nowhere, we got the "here we go" from Fabrizio Romano. It was a shocking development at the time because all summer it had been Liverpool and then PSG vying for the Ivorian signature, yet Papa Perez suddenly intervened, pulling out the checkbook, offering a fee in the region of 120 to 130 million euros. Now, if it was the latter figure, it would be a club record purchase. What I found really interesting about this saga in the immediate aftermath was that Fabrizio's reporting did not corroborate with other mainstream transfer reporters. David Ornstein, who for many is the gold standard of transfer reporting, did in fact break this story around the same time, but in a very different capacity, saying Real Madrid were expected to sign him and that there was an agreement likely soon. But notice how his statement said nothing definitive, which was also the analysis from Sky Germany's Florian Plettenberg. He suggested, as of this minute, absolutely nothing has been agreed between RB Leipzig and Real Madrid for Yan Diomande. Not even an agreement in principle. So it was a rather confusing situation. Now, Fabrizio then went on a bit of a crusade against Plettenberg for questioning the validity of his reporting, which was a low blow, by the way, but I don't really care for the drama of it all. What I care for is a week has since passed and the deal has not progressed at all. And I know transfers can often be a slow burn. Case in point, Kylian Mbappe to Real Madrid, the most painfully slow transfer saga of all time. But every day that passes with Diomande's future still up in the air, Plettenberg's initial analysis is only being vindicated further. His latest assessment as of the 2nd of August is that Leipzig haven't agreed to Madrid's current offer and that no counter-proposal has been made. For what it's worth, he still reiterated that negotiations are in fact ongoing. So I still firmly believe this deal is going to happen, at least as of right now. But at the same time, more information is coming out about this deal in the backdrop, and it's a bit of a nightmare. According to Carlos Forianes' reporting from Spanish outlet AS, it's actually an agent's dispute that is primarily holding up this deal. Granted, AS is not typically a overly reliable source. However, the journalist who wrote this piece, Forianes, is known to cover Madrid from a credible standpoint. So whilst I remain skeptical, I do think at this stage the information is worth interrogating. He's basically suggesting the biggest issue pertains to a legal dispute between two player agencies over who has the rights to represent Diomande. After joining Leipzig through Maxidel management in 2025, Diomande then switched representation to Rock Nation earlier this year as his career really started to explode at Leipzig. Rock Nation then reportedly negotiated his move to Real Madrid, but Maxidel claims the player was still under contract with them, prompting a FIFA complaint. As a result, FIFA is now apparently reviewing the case before the transfer can be fully processed. The good news for Madrid fans here is that this isn't expected to stifle the transfer. FIFA generally prioritizes a player's rights to work, meaning it has the power to issue a provisional registration while the legal battle between the agencies continues in the background. I find it particularly interesting that Rock Nation are once again at the center of contractual drama, because ask any Madrid fan about this specific agency and they'll be acutely aware of them, as it's the same agency that currently represents Vini Jr, who has been in a contractual battle with Madrid over a renewal for over a year now, alongside representing Endrick too. But back to Diomande, and Malik Traore, who is a prominent Ivorian football journalist, is also claiming that Rock Nation negotiated the Diomande transfer from Leipzig to Madrid under the false pretense that he was no longer under contract with Maxidel management, yet Madrid now realize he is, so it's a total mess. This same framing has also been backed up by well-known French journalist Romain Molina too. Funny enough, Rock Nation Sports' international president has since released a public statement on the matter, saying they, quote, cannot stand idle when unprofessional and uninformed media publish fake and damaging information for attention-seeking purposes, especially when it personally targets our clients without any foundation. Media outlets and journalists need to hold themselves accountable. But here's the thing with this statement. What does that even mean? What information is specifically fake here. If anything, this vague, nothing response has only made me believe the story more. So yeah, that's where we are as of right now. I don't know what happens next. What I will say is that I think Fabrizio Romano was very negligent in his initial reporting. Either he was misinformed or he simply wanted to be the first to get the scoop, prematurely jumping the gun before this deal was complete, which Journalism 101 tells you that is not how you do things. This is the reason his reputation is rapidly sinking in the football media space. All too often, Fabrizio's ethics in journalism are coming into question. But what's your whole take on the situation? Let me know your thoughts below. Staying in transfer news, and I guess staying in the Spanish capital, and what is going on with Vini Jr. to Arsenal? Is a formal bid coming? Is he going to renew his contract with Madrid? Could he actually depart on a free transfer in 2027? Those are the questions we all want to know. When news first broke of the Premier League champion's legitimate interest in the Brazilian superstar, I was stunned, because in theory, this would be the biggest transfer in the club's history. And I'm not talking about finances alone, I'm talking about the stature of what Vini Jr. to Arsenal would represent. That's a Galactico in his prime heading to the Emirates. Yeah, that'd be extraordinary. But is it a load of nonsense? Well, here are the facts as of today. The Athletic are reporting that he is Arsenal's #1 attacking target, that the Arsenal ownership are on board and are willing to break their usual wage structure in order to make it happen, and that according to a source within the club, Mikel Arteta loves him. If he doesn't renew, he will be there. Now, in terms of the contract, it does expire in a year's time. There's been ongoing renewal conversations for 18 months now in Madrid without an agreement, and it's getting to crunch time. The main issue of a renewal stems from a salary dispute. Vinicius Jr. is currently paid 18 million euros per year. His camp wants 30 mil in an updated contract, which is Mbappe territory salary. Madrid have been pushing for 20 mil, with bonuses taking it up to potentially 30. They don't want to offer 30 mil fixed, as it will potentially set a precedent for other stars to demand the same in the future. Bellingham might want a word with the Madrid hierarchy if they agreed to this for Vini. Now, Vini himself still appears to be adamant on staying with the hopes of renewing his contract, but simultaneously, the relationship between the player and the club has definitely strained in the past year or so, with Arsenal's sporting director holding conversations with Vini Jr.'s team about the possibility of joining Arsenal as the club's superstar acquisition, to become the face of a team, no pun intended, gunning for everything. Now, 3 years ago, this signing would have made no sense, but Arsenal in 2026 have clearly moved into that category of a world-class team. They are the current top dogs in the most financially lucrative league in the world. So yeah, they could definitely afford him. Think about it. Spurs finished 17th in the Prem, and they've already dropped just shy of £230 million this summer, with their manager suggesting another bomber signing is on the horizon. So you best believe the Premier League's current champions and recent Champions League finalists have serious pulling power. So this is the overall state of play. Arsenal are eagerly awaiting the renewal talks with Madrid. If, for whatever reason, Vini Jr.'s team is unable to come to an agreement with Madrid, Arsenal are going to launch a bid, either now or potentially they may look to bring him in next summer on a free transfer. The fact that Arsenal are even in these conversations is genuinely wild. Like, I love to banter Arsenal. Maybe I do it a little bit too much at times. I'm sorry, I'm only human. But from an objective standpoint, I can see the direction this club is heading in. Going after Ballon d'Or contenders, this is not the Arsenal that I'd previously seen throughout most of my lifetime. Every year under Arteta, the project has gotten better and better and better. So whether they sign Vini Jr. or not, this pursuit is symbolic of a club with serious ambition. As a Chelsea fan, I want my club to be going after big names like Vini Jr. But then again, I don't think Vini Jr. or Alonso himself would ever want such a thing to happen. But in all seriousness, very few clubs in world football could allure Vini Jr. in his prime away from the Bernabeu. So for Arsenal to be in that category is an achievement within itself. That being said, Arsenal fans, I have a perspective, or I guess a question that I'm curious to know if you guys have thought about much, but are you slightly concerned that by going all out for Vini Jr., you are potentially missing out on a more achievable target in one-away PSG winner Bradley Barcola? Because I also think this is a player potentially of world-class caliber that Arsenal aren't prioritizing currently. And I get the logic. Vini Jr. is a bigger name, more established, the better footballer for the here and now. But considering Liverpool are also really keen on the Frenchman, I think that could be a missed opportunity for Arteta down the line. In terms of what he offers as a left winger, I think he would suit Arteta's system perfectly too. Granted, it's still very early days. I just think if the Vini Jr. deal fails, they got to go all out for Barcola instead, because I assume Solis and Martinelli aren't going to take them to the next level. They need a star left winger ASAP. Speaking of left wingers, and Mykhailo Mudryk, remember him? Well, he's officially back and eligible to play football again, having since seen his doping case resolved. He was previously charged by the FA back in 2024 for an alleged positive test for meldonium. Now, straight off the bat, I gotta keep it real with you, I am no expert in this subject. I'm completely out of my depth here, but what I do know is that Mudryk was handed a 4-year ban. However, the FA has now made him eligible, as the Ukrainian had accepted he committed an anti-doping rule violation, but that interestingly enough, his sample would also not have been reported as a positive test today to result in a violation following World Anti-Doping Agency reforms. That statement alone is kind of crazy to me. But anyways, he's got the all clear to legally play again. Now keep in mind, he hasn't played professionally since December 2024, over 18 months out of action entirely, where he wasn't even allowed to train with Chelsea. So I can't imagine he's just going to walk back into first team selection. Despite Xabi Alonso's own words that it's great news and that he's a special player, the club has changed dramatically in the past year and a half. 3 managers later, and Chelsea have since strengthened heavily in the left wing position in Gittins, Garnacho, who has ironically already departed the club, and Morgan Rogers too. So there's a lot of competition on the left flank. There's less football on offer too this season with no European action. There's also no guarantee that Alonso is going to line up with traditional wingers too. So I personally would be surprised if he were to stay at the club this season. I think a loan switch could work wonders. Wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea B, aka Strasbourg, were weighing up a temporary move. It is worth noting that Mudryk has been training pretty intensively by himself at Uxbridge FC's facilities, but no doubt that extended period without actually playing the sport will have taken its toll. Seeing the reaction of Chelsea fans to this news was interesting. There's a real nostalgia element to Mudryk's return, even though he was never unbelievable prior to the ban, but he did have this X-factor quality on occasion that was genuinely unreal to watch. The speed is crazy, some of the dribbling, the passing, and even shooting was very exciting at times. The highlight reels will have you convinced he's the second coming of Hazard, even if in reality he definitely wasn't that. However, that feeling is what Chelsea fans yearn for. Like, Garnacho actually registered more goals and assists in a single season than Mudryk ever did, but those two are received in entirely different worlds. I'd like to see him back one day. You know, at 25, he's still got so much to offer, but I do recognize that his development has definitely been stunted off the back of this hefty ban. He's now on his way to Hong Kong to link up with his teammates for pre-season, so we'll probably have a better indication of where he's at in the next few weeks. Staying in transfer news, and an Aussie transfer record is on the cusp, it seems, with 18-year-old Socceroos central defender Lucas Herrington reportedly on his way to newly promoted Premier League outfit Hull City in a £17 million package deal. So that includes 12.6 mil fixed with a further 4.4 mil in add-ons. Now, as an Australian, this deal is interesting to me for a number of reasons. First and foremost, I am a huge fan of the player. For me, he is the most talented central defender within Australia that I've seen in my lifetime, both past and present. And I know that's a big call, but I genuinely believe it to be true. Composure and footballing ability well beyond his years. Rolls-Royce defender. His progression has taken place at light speed. Prior to the World Cup, he was actively linked with Barcelona alongside Liverpool, and now it's confirmed he's on his way to the Premier League at 18. What a future this lad has on his hands. In saying that, I am absolutely gobsmacked at the ineptitude of his former A-League club Brisbane Roar, because they have missed out on so much money off the back of this sale. I remember when Brisbane's former coach made the bold claim that the then 17-year-old academy prospect was, quote, the best defender in Australian football before he'd even played a pro game. The statement drew criticism back then, but fair play to the manager because he was bang on at the time. The same season, he went on to make his pro debut, and the following campaign, MLS side Colorado snatched him up for a mere 800,000 Australian dollars. In fairness to Brisbane, he wasn't a real household name back then, but part of the deal also included a 20% sell-on clause for a transfer. That was sensible back then, but soon after immediately making a name for himself in the MLS with Colorado, the Raw's owner then sold their own sell-on clause back to Colorado for just $560,000. That is absolutely embarrassing stuff. As if that wasn't bad enough, according to Vince Rugani for the Sydney Morning Herald, internal members of Brisbane strongly advised the owners not to agree to this, but at the merest sight of immediate reward, they took the $500K. So staggeringly stupid, considering that 6 months later, Colorado is set to bank as much as $23 million US, which translates to almost 33 million Australian dollars. If they kept the sell-on clause instead of taking the $500K, they could have pocketed as much as $6.5 million down the line, but Brisbane were too short-sighted. Dreadful stuff. The only solace as someone that wants to see Australian clubs continue to develop is that the A-League is now producing so many ballers all of a sudden. Patrick Beach just signed for Liga and Club Troyes. Meanwhile, Ocon Engsler joined Bundesliga club Köln in a record transfer. And Akol Akon, Sydney FC's latest wonder kid, is set for a multi-million-dollar transfer of his own to the MLS. Hopefully Sydney FC have the wherewithal to think long-term about the sale, but nonetheless, exciting times ahead for Aussie football. Herrington is on his way to Hull City as their biggest ever signing, so he's not just one for the future, no. This is the guy who they've profiled to play a key role in attempting to avoid the drop. At this stage, I'd still say Hull have the weakest team in the league by some margin, but clearly I rate this transfer. Anyways, lads, that's all for today's DMAC Daily. I know there were so many transfers that went down this weekend, which I didn't get to cover, so in tomorrow's ep, I'll do exactly that. Till then though, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.